Hello, boys and girls. Hello, weather kids. I'm going to introduce you to an El Paso writer, Mr. Ken Webb, and he's going to discuss the creative process with us. Welcome, Mr. Webb.
Thank you.
Your first question is, at what age did you start writing?
I began really writing at age 10, but I was a storyteller even before then because my mother would relate stories to me at age 2 or 3, sitting in front of the window and telling my grandfather what I was seeing in a little farm in Kentucky.
Question number 2. Is this your first book that has been published?
This is my first book that's been published, although I've had several stories published, self-published online at various blog sites.
That's great. What advice do you have for young writers?
Write. The first rule is if you want to be a writer, write. But along with that, you also need to read a tremendous amount so you get a feel for other writers as well.
Do you get ideas from people that you meet?
All the time. There's so many different character types. People are so different from one individual to another. And so you kind of shop around. You see someone that grabs your attention and you go, wow, wouldn't that be fun to write about them in this situation and how you think they would act.
Who is your favorite author?
That is probably the hardest question so far. Probably absolute favorite, because I thought about that a lot last night, is Mary Shelley, Frankenstein.
Wow, that's a really good
And not so much for the horror aspect, but she's just an incredible prose writer. When you read that story aloud, as it was meant to be, it just has a feel and a richness to it. It's like really thick hot chocolate.
It's also sort of a ghost story. How would you describe the stories in your collection of stories, Shadows of Time?
I have to place myself firmly in the genre of general fiction, really, because I range from ghost stories to hard science fiction. And then I've also got some chicken soup type stories that I've written as well. Your
next question is, what inspires you?
Wow. Feelings inspire me. The idea of trying to convey a feeling. As a firefighter for 20 years, I have to tell you there was a lot of times that I was absolutely terrified. And to try and relay that feeling, it's difficult in the real world, but it's much easier in a fantasy or a fiction type setting to just focus on those emotions and try and convey those.
Your next question is, what made you want to be a writer?
Wow. I don't think I ever focused on being a published writer. I just wrote. I wrote for myself. I was having some difficulty sleeping for several years, and a lot of my writings in Shadows of Time was written while I couldn't sleep. And then a friend read some of the stories and told me, wow, this is really good. You should look into some publishers or magazines. So I started doing that. And of course, there was 2 years of just one turn down after another before I finally got a hit with my publisher.
Your next question is, have you always been a writer?
I don't think I've always been a writer. I mean, that latent ability, I think, was there, and I think it's in everybody to some degree. But I stopped writing little stories shortly after I went in the military. There was a couple of tries at some longer, far-reaching stories, and it didn't really resurface until after I retired and after Alric was born.
How long did it take you to complete your book?
Shadows of Time is still an ongoing thing because I've noticed some I've noticed some editing issues that we need to take care of, and probably the second printing, if I get a second printing. And it probably represents, let's say 4 years, and plus or minus 1 year. So about 4 years, I think.
I know all of us here at El Paso Country Day School are very proud of you, of your accomplishment. Are you proud of yourself?
I'm still stunned. Honestly, I was going through the process because I had nothing to lose as far as the submissions and things like that, but I hit a point where I didn't think it was going to be published as a work, and so I just kind of gave up right at the time that I received an email. Actually, after I came back from my mother's funeral, there was an email waiting for me on one of my blog sites that said, "Hey, we might be interested in your stories," and so I sent that in, and it's been a whirlwind ever since. So pride. Sometimes I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty proud of myself after I've written a story, but right now I'm still caught in this whirlwind. It's really cool to say, add on your resume, published author. That's I don't know what the statistics are, but I would wager it's like 1 in 10,000 or something like that. So that's pretty darn cool.
I have a question that I'd like to ask you. I'd like to ask you about the creative process and how you think the children, whether it be through writing, photography, or art, how they could enhance their creativity.
I think that's a many-fold kind of thing. I think we all have it in ourselves to be creative and find different ways to express that. Besides writing, I also do stone carving, and that's a very therapeutic thing for me. The key of the whole thing for me is you listen to as many people as possible. There's some great information out there. I love both Stephen King's books, both On Writing and Danse Macabre. There's some great advice for new writers in both of those. But you have to recognize that Mr. King really was learning to be a writer in the 50s. And so a lot of things have changed technology-wise. We now have the internet to tap into, and that changes things. It changes how we find our publishers. It changes how we write things down, because suddenly the pen and paper is not the main item. We're typing directly onto a computer. We have word processors and even grammar checkers. So you find as many tools as you can that contribute towards your writing, and then you just relax and write what you feel.
I'd like to thank you for your time and for allowing us to have you on our blog. Could you hold your book for the camera?
Sure.
We are going to have a link on the blog to this book, and this is El Paso's very own Ken Webb. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.